It really comes down to recognizing your client's needs, or in some cases, creating that need for a brand new product category.
You're listening to Stories from the Top, an inside guide to better business development. All right, we're here with Stuart Bran, the founder of Bran Advertising. Stu started his business back in 1988, and before that, he spent 20 years working on Madison Avenue for some of the top advertising agencies in New York. He's created advertisements for nearly every industry, including food, fashion, and feminine hygiene. So, Stu, for those who don't know you, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Well, very briefly, as brief as possible, I decided I wanted to be a commercial artist when I was 11 years old. That's what the title was. It eventually became art director. I was very fortunate, and I grew up in an area of the North Bronx that had an excellent junior high school that had a very strong arts program. Quite a number of famous people came out of what was known as Marshall Parkway Junior High School 80 in the North Bronx. We've got Calvin Klein and Ralph Lauren and Gary Penny Marshall were all in the school before me. And from there, I applied for and was accepted to the High School of Music and Art in Manhattan. And from there to Pratt Institute, where I majored in advertising design and visual communication. The next step after that, upon graduation, I graduated in June of '68 and started working on Madison Avenue in July of 1968.
You just applied and got the job right away?
No, well, pretty much, yes. I would have to say it did happen pretty quickly. There was that 1 month gap in between, but yes.
I feel like today there's like so many people who want to work in advertising. Was it like a different world back then? Was it highly competitive or?
Oh, it was very highly competitive. I think what helped me tremendously is that when I was going to Pratt my senior year, the senior project was actually held in the evening at advertising agencies. So I was able to build a portfolio of real products, some of them actually presented to real clients, and then use that as an entree into an advertising agency. My first job happened to have been in the bullpen of an advertising agency. For those who don't know aware of what a bullpen is, that's where they did the paste ups and the mechanicals. Industry has changed tremendously since then. I'm sure we'll talk about that. But I was able to do that. I had a lot of experience in presenting portfolio, and I was started in a pharmaceutical advertising agency, and was promoted after 8 months to a assistant art director, and then 4 months later to another position, also assistant art director, but still within the area. And then after 15 months of that, I applied for a job at a consumer advertising agency on Madison Avenue.
So it sounds like you knew from the very beginning that you wanted to work in advertising. What was it about advertising that sparked your interest?
The glamour. Plus, I have always been very creative, artistically, and just the thought process. And it just seemed like a natural thing for me. As I said, 11 years old, knowing what you want to do, you know. A lot of kids want to be firemen or astronauts or something like that. And it was, I guess for me, pretty easy. I was able to, my second job, I stayed at for a little over 7.25 years and worked on a lot of known products. Everything for Avis except the rental car division. Consolidated Cigar for Dutch Masters, Polybergen Cosmetics, Francis Denny Cosmetics, a lot of other products in between there. And then from there, I went to, got hired by the largest advertising agency in the country at the time, Young & Rubicam, where I spent 10 years.
These campaigns you were working on, I know nowadays there's so much digital work being done. There wasn't even really an internet back then. What were you guys primarily creating material for? Was it Did you go into television stuff, or was it mostly print and physical
Well,
packaging?
early in my career, it was print because of my level. My second job, I was there 5 years. I was given the opportunity to do my first commercial. It happened to have been for Harvester cigars. It was the whole nature of the way advertising was created back then had changed from where it had been before. And to where it is now is just light years ahead of that. There was no digital at all. Everything was drawn, and that's where my artistic ability helped me tremendously, in that I was able to draw the layouts and the designs. And that's my strong point. In advertising, you work as a creative team, and that team consists of basically an art director and a copywriter. Now, there may be several teams working on the same brand or parts of the brand, but you would sit across from the copywriter, in my case, and just come up with ideas and hash it out and try to complete each other's thoughts.
So it's just like the two of you sitting around a table, coming up with ideas, making drawings, writing things down?
Yes, but it's all based on what the strategy has been developed by the higher-ups.
Yeah, so what's like the workflow if somebody wanted to create a campaign with one of these giant agencies?
Well, generally what you're doing is you're given an outline, and it's based on a strategy that's been selected. And some brands have multiple strategies because they have multiple clients in different directions. And you've given all the strong points about the things, the problem you're trying to solve, and then you try to come up with a creative way of solving that problem. And it's sometimes it comes real fast, and sometimes it's not so fast.
Any specific stories jump out to you, like about when you were working in this scenario?
Depending on the clients, without mentioning the names of the companies, I'll protect the guilty. Some clients have very strict guidelines about what they're looking for, and it becomes difficult to be able to come up with an idea that stays within their guidelines. Or in advertising, if it's a print ad, they test the ad to find out how well it's going to do. And anytime an ad tests very well, it then raises the bar for the next ad that gets done. So it becomes increasingly difficult. There are other companies that school their brand managers in negative thought to look at something and make sure it doesn't get the company in trouble. And there are companies that are just not open to being very creative. That was not my case, in that I was very fortunate. Both with my second job and in my third job at Younger Rubicam were known for their creativity. So creative was the star, and just coming up with an interesting way of getting the strategy across to people. What it always comes down to is, what is the end benefit? Your client, customer wants to know what's in it for them. And the best way you can do that, to pay that off, is to do it in a creative way that is unique from what your competition has been doing.
And so you were working there for 20 years, was it?
My experience on Madison Avenue is actually almost exactly 20 years. Yeah.
And then what happened that you got out of that position and transitioned to owning your own business?
Well, I'm going to give you a little, imagine a train going down a track, and a train is starting out of the station when you're 11 years old. I've been on that track my entire career. But in 1986, there was a big implosion in the advertising industry, where companies were buying other agencies were buying other agencies. And as a result, because of duplication of efforts or budgets, whatever, there were a lot of people suddenly out of work in advertising in New York City in 86. I was at the largest agency at the time. There were 68 assistant art directors, senior art directors, creative supervisors. So you can imagine the size of the company was billing over $1 billion, which was unheard of at the time. I think they're somewhere around 20 billion now, but it's part of that's the economy. And it was just a matter of surviving. I survived the first 2 cuts. They got me on the third one, and I was fortunate in that I was given 4 months in which to find another job. It was highly unusual. Young and Rubicam at the time had 3 creative groups, and each group had to let 4 people go. Everybody was out the door that Friday, except for me. I was very close to be fully vested in the company, and they realized it, and they gave me 4 months to find another job. And in that period of time, I was able to put things together. If you imagine a spur or a railroad track going off to the side and then straight back down the same path, I started a small agency with 2 other people that I had worked with before. It was called Off Madison Avenue Advertising, because we were literally off Madison Avenue. We weren't even in New York City. We were in Rockland County, New York. And we struggled for a long time, but had some small accounts. Our largest account, which was Orange and Rockland Utilities, we actually were away from a 35-person agency based on our creative. Unfortunately, the partnership didn't work out, and after 15 months we split, and I walked away with 7 of the 9 accounts.
So how did you divide the roles between you and your partner? Like, what part did you play? What part did he play?
Well, I was the art director. He was the copywriter, and the third person was supposed to be an account executive, but he bailed at the last moment. And the third person was actually my assistant art director, who had worked with me at another agency.
Was it like 50% ownership or 30-30? Was there 3 of you? Or
there were
just
3 of us, and it was 1/3.
Okay, 1/3 each.
After 15 months, we split. I walked away with 5 of the 7 accounts. I walked away with 7 of the 9 accounts, but I had actually brought 5 of those accounts in with me.
Okay, yeah, that was what I was going to ask is, like, how did you originally set up your marketing to get those first clients in the first place?
We actually did mailings to businesses in the area, and I owe a great deal of that to a woman who helped put me in business, Nancy Lupiano. God bless her. She has since passed away. But she sent out a mailing that we had done, and it just landed on the right desk. We had 2 people literally walk through the door. They saw our sign on the outside that said Off Madison Avenue Advertising, and we did that. Plus, 2 accounts came with me because they knew me from when I had worked actually at the big agencies. Not big accounts, but they knew me.
So then you had that to take with you as you started your own personal branding agency. So tell me about that transition.
That was actually a remarkable transition in that I now had accounts to work on, and I needed a base to work out of. I knew somebody who needed an art director for 2 or 3 days a week back on Madison Avenue, and it was the perfect arrangement for me. I was able to work there when they needed me. They allowed me to work on my own stuff when I wasn't working on theirs. They appreciated the fact that I had a small advertising agency like them and understood the dynamics of what was involved with that. The best part of that was they got their first Mac computer system, and I learned on their dime, along with the creative director of the agency. And without that, I would have been a dinosaur. And from there, their business was slowing down a little bit. Mine was picking up where I couldn't afford to come in to work for them. And we made a very amicable separation. We were in touch for many years after that. And I, frankly, never looked back. Never had to go looking for accounts. They all came to me on referrals.
That's awesome. So what were some of the biggest challenges as you became your own boss and were running your own business?
Support. Support in the fact that I didn't want to be an employer, but I needed people to support me. I needed copywriters to work with me. I needed photographers and illustrators and people to do those things. And it was just managing that. At one point back in 95, 96, I had 33 projects going at one time. I managed to do it. I was working long hours, but I was ecstatic. I was happy. This is what I wanted to do. I was being very creative, and it just became a natural thing. And I had to make the decision: do I increase the size of the company, hire employees, or maintain a staff of freelancers who I knew and trusted, and because of our relationship, were readily available to me? I made the decision to not expand, not become an employer.
Why is that? Why did you want to go that path?
A mentor had advised me, says, be careful what you do about hiring people. I said, in a bad economy, and there were ups and downs, in a bad economy where you have to cut back, you're going to absolutely hate having to fire someone who you really value and trust. And it was the best decision I made at that point to do that, because the bad economy did hit. In 2008, there was a big downturn once again in everything, not just advertising, everything. I had a friend who I actually helped put in business who had 6 or 7 people working for him, and he suddenly had to let 5 of them go. He felt awful, but the business wasn't there anymore. So that's a bit of advice I like to give people who own businesses. You have to make the decision about whether you want to stay with what you do, but have a support team behind you, or do you want it to grow? It varies for everybody. It depends on your personality. For me, creativity was the most important thing, and I just like having a personal hand in what I was doing.
So who are the clients that you're focusing on serving now?
They are mainly B2B clients, business to business. I'm not really doing any consumer work except for 2 accounts. And that is just the way it works. The principles are the same, no matter what your audience is.
Is there any specific industries that you're serving or anything like that?
Nothing specific.
Who's like a home run client for you?
A perfect client is someone who recognizes the value of marketing and is willing to hire a professional to do it, and will accept what the professional is telling them. It doesn't matter what industry they're in, doesn't matter what size the business is. The principles behind the marketing or branding remains the same. And it's something that I refer to as the USP, which is the unique selling proposition. It's marketing 101. What is unique about your company that sets you apart, and more importantly, above your competition? But it is amazing how many companies I come across who do not have a unique selling proposition. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that they haven't really reassessed what their company is doing and what it stands for, or they haven't really addressed who their competition is. I worked on Avis early in my career, not the rent-a-car division, but the truck leasing and renting and the car leasing. But the consumer part of the car rental business for Avis, they had a campaign that was very known, it was We Try Harder. And it was a brilliant campaign because they were number 2 and Hertz was number 1. So their principle was, we try harder, we have to, because we're number 2, we're not number 1. And it helped grow that brand tremendously. Now, they were still number 2 to Hertz, but they were a very strong number 2. It's just recognizing what the challenge is, presenting it in a very creative way. Volkswagen has a history, if I can get into that. They came to the United States, and Volkswagen had a bad reputation because they had been building vehicles for Nazi Germany. But they came to the United States with a little car called the Beetle. How do you sell this little car when Americans love big cars, even back then? Well, they ran an ad, it was a full-page ad with a little bug and the little Beetle in the picture of the car in the lower right-hand corner. And the headline of the ad was "Think Small." And it attracted a lot of attention. And they grew the brand that way. And it was for an affordable, smaller car that they were able to build it. They recognized what the audience was looking for at the time, or they created that need.
I have a quick question. You were talking a little bit about hesitancy to give over creative control from some people, and other times we always notice that marketing is one of the first things to get slashed. What do you think the reason is behind not giving marketing its full due from like the business perspective?
In a word, ignorance. Having been in this business for 55 years now, it continuously amazes me how in a bad economy, the first thing that gets cut is marketing. The second thing that gets cut is research. So let's cut off both of your arms because that's the future of your company. I have counseled clients to not cut back on their advertising or readjust their advertising in a bad economy. And those that don't find themselves going out of business. I have a story of, which is very long, I won't relate, but someone who just did not understand the value of marketing, and that gets back to the point that I raised earlier. And in the bad economy, he cut back on, not only cut back on it, he eliminated all of his advertising. And 2 years later, when the economy had turned around, he went back to his base clientele, which happened to have been towns and cities. And they all remarked, "Oh, we thought you went out of business." Well, within 6 months, the company was out of business. I have a client that does a very high-end design build firm that does kitchens, bathrooms, whole house renovations, new construction, everything. And when a bad economy hit in 2008, he did not change his advertising schedule. He just changed what he was showing in his advertising. He took on smaller projects and was able to maintain his 10 crews without letting anybody go. And talk about valuable employees you want to keep. He changed his business model. And a lot of times when I speak to groups of people or even individuals, and I've had the book with me, I talk about a book called Who Moved My Cheese? Essential reading for anybody who goes into any business is what happens when the environment changes. The most recent one being COVID. What happens with that? If you have a business where someone has to be in place to see your advertising, and that place is now closed because of restrictions, what do? You change your business model. And I know somebody who did that, who started switching his clients over to Google to sell there, because his advertising were big screens in restaurants or businesses. He had to change, and he survived, and he's doing very well now because of it.
I wanted to ask, there's like a million different marketing companies out there. What do you think it is that separates the good ones from the rest?
I would say researching what your client is doing, asking probing questions, learn about their business. Anytime I meet with someone whose industry I'm not familiar with, one of the first things I say, I don't know what your business is, so you need to educate me. And I ask some very specific questions. Show me what if it's an existing company, show me what you've been doing as far as marketing or branding your company. Show me what your competition is doing. That sometimes trips business owners up because they're not really paying attention to what the competition is doing. Unless it's a large company, then you know they've got a marketing company, a firm or department within the company that does that. Smaller businesses, sometimes it's arrogance. They just assume everybody knows about their business, or because they think they're the best, that everyone will come to them rather than the competition. It's really learning about a business and then creating a strategy based on what you've learned and then developing the creative off of that strategy.
Are there any techniques that you recommend for like running a research campaign for small businesses?
depending on how you're doing it, I can speak from experience that sometimes if a company's running an offer and you're not quite sure what kind of offer is going to be best, that you change the offer, change where that offer is appearing. And it can be something that is either in a mailer or in a magazine or on digital, and social media, testing the water. Do people like being told that it's going to get $50 off of something on a higher priced item, or do they like hearing they're going to get 10% off? It depends on the actual cost, and it varies from business to business. But you have to assess that. You can do that. Now, in big advertising agencies, we did testing all the time. You just, the example I can give is Johnson & Johnson. Anytime we did an ad for any of the products, and I worked on baby powder and baby lotion and things like that, the ad had to score a certain number. If it didn't, they killed the ad. If it scored a good number, then the ad ran nationally. And they would only do it in 5 or 6 test markets across the country to get that feedback. That cost a lot of money. But think of it, it can be done on a much smaller scale. I do a lot of work for an optometric practice, and we've run ads for them that have different offers in it, to the point we now know what works and what doesn't work. Don't be afraid to change things too. The environment doesn't stay the same, so your advertising has to remain fresh, your branding. Some people ask me, well, what's the difference between advertising and marketing and branding? It's all the same. It's just different degrees of it. Advertising is probably thought of as the physical, I can see this, what's going on here. The marketing is the thought process behind it all. And the branding is everything. Every piece of communication that comes out of your company, your business, should look or sound like it's coming from the same source. There can be different messages, but there should be no confusion. One ad from another ad or one posting on social media should be recognizable in some way that this is coming from the brand, so it doesn't look like a whole bunch of different companies talking to you about the same thing.
So I know you've done some unique branding with your own agency. Tell me about some of the branding elements that you've used to advertise Bran advertising.
Well, it's very interesting. I attend a networking group on Friday morning, and I guess it helps to have a name that can be used as a visual. With the name Bran, everyone thinks of Bran muffins or Bran cereals. So I have sitting on the table in front of me, when there's 50, 60 people in a room, I have a box of cereal. But instead of it saying Raisin Bran, it says Stuart Bran. And it has my branding message on it, which is creative concepts that get you noticed. And that's one of the ways I do it. Within postings on social media, I use that as a gimmick, if you will. Not everybody has that luxury to do that. I can point to somebody whose last name is very similar to what he actually does, where everybody in that focus, in the networking group, now knows to finish his sentence with his name and brand, if you will. Creating a brand is very crucial. You cannot exist and survive in a business unless people can recognize your brand and, most importantly, begin to trust that brand.
Well, why is it so important to have a brand and not just like the name of your business?
A brand should convey a message. Now, in my case, my brand, creative concepts that get you noticed. There's 2 parts to that one sentence, 6 words. It's what I do, creative concepts, or I can expand it, creative branding concepts that get you noticed. There's the end benefit for my clients. That's an ideal brand. Or something that sets you apart, and once again, above your competition, that says you do something better. I talk about I don't do cliches. Cliches are phrases that any company can use in any business, and it means nothing. There are some companies out there now who use a very similar phrase and is experience the difference. Well, what's the difference? It's the cliche. Experience the difference can be put into any company, or celebrating 25 years. I look at that and say, so what? Where's the end benefit for it? We challenge you to compare. Well, where's the challenge? Where's to do that? So I like to turn things around on that. I've actually used a variation on that phrase for a company where they were running advertising that was practically invisible. And we created a new look for them and a new message. We use, instead of we challenge you to compare, we use the phrase of there is no comparison, based on their uniqueness and what the product was and the way they were marketing it.
So what are some of your plans for the future of brand advertising?
Just keep going. I'm elderly. I have a lot of gray or white hair. Part of it's because of maybe a little stress, or part of it's just because I'm getting old, or I am old. I retired 5 years ago. I said, okay, that's it. It was the 30th anniversary of my business. I actually retired on the anniversary date of when I started business. But 2 years ago, I was sort of reassessing things and saying, I really miss this. I miss the creative challenge. So I went back out there and started going to networking groups. I don't advertise my company per se. I'm not looking to just pick up business. At this point in my career, I'm looking for interesting creative challenges. So if someone comes to me and said, well, I need a logo, I need a website. I said, that's great. Let's talk about everything. Well, I just need a logo. Well, I can point you in the direction to go to that. Or a website. Well, what's the message for us? What's the purpose of the website? What are you doing to support that website? That's the creative challenge that I'm looking for. Right when I was announced my retirement with my networking group, someone approached me and said, I'm representing 3 gentlemen who are starting a brand new IT company, and they need a website. I said, will you talk to them? I said, sure. Let's see what they have to say. And it was actually a telephone conference call. This is not even Zoom back then. And I asked them the name of the company, and there was dead silence. Finally, one of them said, we don't have a name yet. Well, I will tell you that really sparked my interest. This was a creative challenge to beat all challenges. Come up with a company name, a logo, a website, an entire graphic look, and all the content for the company. It was very stimulating. That's the kind of challenge I like. Somebody once joked about the fact that the advertising business is the focus of it is to get you to buy products you didn't realize you needed. That's a little cynical, but it's. I like to think of it as to get you to realize that you've been missing this product.
So, Stu, if somebody wants to learn more or speak with you directly, how can they get in touch?
Oh, I love speaking to people. One of the favorite things that I do is mentoring people who are starting out in this business. They can do that by calling me or emailing me. Go to my website, which I will openly admit I have not updated in many years because I really haven't had a need to. But every time I look at it, I said, yeah, let's do this. But then I get involved doing my clients' work. And that's some advice that I have to business owners too, in that hire a professional. If you are going to do your branding yourself, when are you going to do it? It's going to be an evening after work, on the weekends. Be honest with yourself. Are you really going to get it done then, or something else? Will life get in the way? I'd like to be able to tell my clients, mind your own business. If you are in the design build industry. You shouldn't be worrying about getting your advertising into a publication or doing a mailing or any posting on social media. There are people who live in that environment all the time. Trust them to do the work for you. Now, I don't do it blindly, without my clients knowing what I'm doing, but I like to be able to give them a sort of a peace of mind in that this is being controlled and I don't have to worry about a deadline or, I'll do it tonight. Oh, wait a second, my son's basketball team is playing tonight, I can't do that. Or my daughter's gymnastics team is, competing, or something like that.
Well, Stu, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your story. We really appreciate it. In our next episode, we're going to be talking with Stu about the differences between big budget advertising and small business advertising. So don't miss it. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Stories from the Top is your guide to successful business development. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts or find Edge of Cinema on YouTube. Stories from the Top is an Edge of Cinema production, hosted by Matthew Skura and Jeremy Schmidt. To learn more or get in touch, visit edgeofcinema.com/podcast.